Well, let's stay with that story. We're joined now by Sputnik Rata, who is the spokesperson for the Department of Water and Sanitation. Mr. Rata, good evening to you. Thanks for your time. Look, it's not just about the money that is needed to repair that infrastructure, but it's really about practically assessing the timelines that realistically will enable the residents of KwaZulu-Natal on a broader scale to be able to have water, running water back in their homes and in their communities. How long is that going to take?
Kathy, thank you very much. That's a very difficult one because it's a question of how long is a piece of string, considering the kind of carnage that has happened in that province up to now. But I think what is encouraging is that even as the assessment in most parts is still continuing, even as the costs are being worked out, even as more capacity is being brought into the province. One thing that we can be sure of is that some of the work to bring relief to the people who are affected is already underway. And that is why we are able to really say that in some parts where there is an area in eThekwini where we are putting up a package plant that will then be able to treat water whilst repairs are happening to the main infrastructure. There are areas where we have brought in extra water tankers up to a total of about 191 across the area that will be able to bring, in the meantime. Although that is also hampered by the state of roads that we are encountering as we are going on. But it is not something that we're just throwing our hands in the air and then saying that, well, we will wait for some of the 6 months in some of the other areas where major difficulties have been experienced.
The Army's been brought in specifically to assist in areas such as, the re-establishment of services, whether it's with the road infrastructure, supplying electricity and water. Talk to us about how you are engaging then some of those members in your efforts to restore water.
Well, one of the decisions that Minister made, and very fundamental, and with the support of the municipalities that have been affected, is that of having a war room, basically bringing, expertise at different levels, but more so, your engineers, your water scientists, and all of those kind of people that are enhancing the capacity that was in the municipalities already or found to have been lacking in the municipalities. And therefore, that war room sits almost on a daily basis, and it is working very hard towards finalizing the issue of the assessments and working out exactly what it is that is required. And that in itself has been a big boon, because as it is led at the moment by the director that's responsible for infrastructure in eThekwini, which is the most affected area of KwaZulu-Natal, we are beginning to see some of the workings of that group coming together. Minister was saying earlier on that we are now into the third week of this disaster, and it is imperative and very important that the people that are affected, the communities that have been impacted, need to start seeing some of the benefits of having the people around, notwithstanding the fact that we still are experiencing rains that might put a damper on some of the work that is being done. But we have to just keep on pushing so that the services can be restored to the people that require them.
How do you prioritize then what the main focus in as far as the intervention plan is going to be, given the scale of the work that needs to be done?
One of the things that we have found, and that Minister raised as well, and the executive mayor of eThekwini also impressed upon, is that although this is a negative when you look at it in terms of the impact, in terms of what it has done to communities and the infrastructure and so on, but what it has done is to have created an opportunity as well to fast-track some of the work that was going to be done over a longer period. And therefore, the replacement of some of the infrastructure the refurbishment of some of the infrastructure, the bringing forward of some of the projects that are supposed to enhance and raise availability of services, especially water and sanitation, has been brought to the fore. So that will enable us, and through the fact that there is a state of disaster that has been declared, that then will be able to fast-track some of the decision-making as well as availing of the necessary funding. But a critical part that we may not want to ignore is the involvement of especially the private sector in these efforts that we are seeing now. When we see that companies like your Toyota, your SAB, and others have actually brought in human capital that is working together with all the officials that are working around the clock on these matters.
Mr. Rata, when it comes to the reconstruction that is set to take place here and the predictions, the modeling that we have seen around an area like KZN, which is expected to continue having more inclement weather in coming years, how are you going to ensure that that information informs the way in which infrastructure is built going forward to ensure that it's a lot more resilient than perhaps what it has been?
I think we must see this as also impressing upon how it is important to work in the cluster format that cabinet has put together, and as well as that is going down into the provinces and so on. Because earlier on, the Minister of the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment spoke to exactly the same issue, that we need to be able to say how are the issues that are dealt with by the Department of Agriculture that have got an environment, that have got an impact on agriculture, that have got an impact on how we plan and how we design and ultimately implement the water infrastructure, and as well as the needs and demands of everyone else across the country. How are those then brought together to have an impact and to bring an understanding, especially to something like our response, for instance, to the issues of climate change. Therefore, climate change has got to have an impact on designs of not just infrastructure, but as well as the living habitat. For instance, where we actually have our industries and so on. What are the things that we use in order to enhance the economic activities of the country? All of those things have got to come together to be able to say this is part of the planning that we as a country, and ultimately as all of us as the people of this country, are supposed to be looking at.
Water and Sanitation spokesperson Sputnik Rata. Let's leave it there for tonight.